So we just left Cambridge. We've just done the interview with Julian Huppert, the MP. Julian is one of few MPs with a science background. He's actually a really nice guy as well. We really enjoyed the interview with him. One of the icebreakers that Julian said when we were doing the interview was that when he was studying DNA, he liked to listen to Frank Zappa. He said the randomness kind of gave him space for thought and everything, which I thought was pretty cool, with us being like music and science kids. And here's that interview right now.
Yes, but it can be done. So.
Yeah. Yeah, also, what was something that you said earlier about, was it 9 MPs went to...
Something like 9, yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think there's so much apathy among MPs for science, towards science?
I think it's partly that a lot of MPs are a bit scared of it.
Yeah.
There's still this whole group of people who didn't really get science at school, found it hard, confusing, something they didn't really do, and they then go on. I think the other thing is just that MPs' lifestyles are incredibly flat out. So trying to find time is really hard. I mean, this was run just after we'd all started, we were all looking around going, where is everything? How does this work? Do I have a spare hour? Well, no. And so for somebody like me, it was like, well, this is something I will fit into my hour. But for others, they'd have said, no, not really. So I think it needed to be more compulsory, actually. It needed to be part of the training course on the, because there was a course which everybody went to where we had, the clerk of the house explaining how it all works. People went to that. Have a series of events, including this as part of that formally. Then I think you get people to show up.
I just want to slightly off topic. You just wanted to ask. You'd said that, I think this was in your maiden speech, perhaps, that you become increasingly concerned with the breadth of the DNA database. This is off your website, actually, and that this is one of the critical aspects of civil liberties at the moment. I just wanted to ask you about it because you've got a background in DNA, and what do you think of the DNA database?
I think the concept of DNA matching for criminal purposes is incredibly powerful, incredibly useful. Keeping everybody's data forever, or 6 years, 12 years, is a really dangerous thing to do. It's a classic problem. There is no doubt that the police could solve more crimes if there was a camera mounted in every single room monitoring everything that we did all of the time. That would make police work a lot easier, but it's just not acceptable. And so the question is always trying to work out what are the boundaries of what's okay and what isn't. DNA database went far too far. It was also posited to be able to do things that it couldn't really do. And some of the evidence that they used, there was a Home Office consultation at one point where they were looking at what your chances were of... The question I wanted to ask was, because the controversy is about keeping data from people who haven't been convicted. And they would say, what is the chance of you, if you haven't been convicted of something but accused, of you committing another crime within the next few years? And it was really horrible because they had no actual data on that at all. So they said, well, let's assume that if you weren't convicted of anything, that's basically the same as if you had been convicted. So we can look at the data for people who have been convicted of something. Hang on. And then worked out what your chance of being convicted again were, which are obviously a bit higher. And then they made up some figures, and it was just this awful drive to try to say, look, we want to keep data on everybody. We've actually scrapped most of the long-term things, so we kept for a very short time period, except in a few special cases. The Scottish model, which is much more balanced. But it's a big civil liberties issue, that ultimately it's a balancing question. How do you value the freedoms that we enjoy against controlling things to make everybody safe? If you go to one extreme or the other, it doesn't work. There's actually a brilliant book I just finished reading called Intrusion by Ken MacLeod, which is a really brilliant, chilling vision into a sort of near future where there is all of this monitoring and people aren't allowed to do things which would be unsafe for them. You're monitored for your own protection.
Right.
Very chilling. No, we've made progress on that, and there's a lot more to go, but yeah.
Just one more then, if that's okay, which is, this was from your main speech, you said that we're too fixated on GDP, and that we need to focus more broadly on personal issues such as well-being and happiness. I just wondered what you think about how science can inform policy of well-being and happiness.
Massively. It's a really, really key thing. I mean, this whole area about sort of well-being economics is a really important one. GDP measures how much money there is in the whole system. It's not a measure of what we actually care about. Money is useful. I think it's Homer Simpson. Money can be used by goods and services. That's what it's for. It's not there for itself. And GDP is just an awful measure. If you smash up a building and then it gets fixed up, GDP goes up. If you smoke, get lung cancer, have surgery, GDP's gone up. Actually, those are not great things. Going for a walk doesn't increase GDP. Well, hang on. You can enjoy one of those a lot more than the others. Yeah. And science can do a huge amount about the wellbeing area. Now, I'm slightly biased here because my mother is an academic and her specialist field is, in fact, the science of wellbeing. So she published a book that she referred to in a debate last week about mental health, looking at all the evidence about wellbeing and what you can do, what interventions you can do in schools, in all sorts of different areas to change how people behave. It's some really, really good stuff there. It's a great book. I'm obviously biased, but the evidence, the science of wellbeing.
Science of wellbeing.
Bright yellow cover. It's a really, really stunning piece of work. But there's a lot known now about what you can do to reduce mental ill health, for example. In a very positive way, not the sort of drugs and talking therapies, but just by moving everybody in the population so that they're just happier about what they're achieving and doing. Really interesting area. But it's also very important if we have limited resources that we can use up. We currently have a society where we measure success for our economy essentially by how much resource we use. We have to stop doing that and measure it by what we're all getting out of it. Much better way to go.
Okay, I'll finish there.
Okay,
thanks very much for your time.
Thanks very much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.